Right. What I'd like to start off is to explain a little bit about the history. We recently renamed ourselves to Pivotal Metals. We started off with tin and tungsten in Spain, but about a year ago, we decided that as a junior managing two development projects in Spain with a fairly challenging commodity like tungsten to get out to the market and get them to understand, we felt that we needed to shift the business to an area where we had a different commodity that was better understood, very bullish forecasts, and also in a jurisdiction that we would consider a tier one jurisdiction. And we were fortunate enough to have an exploration package called Midram and LaForce that we had acquired in late 2020 in Quebec, in southwest Quebec, a battery metals portfolio, highly prospective, and we decided to build a portfolio around that. So over the last 9 months, we have significantly shifted the focus of the business to Canada to become a battery metals focused company with assets in Quebec. How do I change this?
The green.
This? Oh yeah, that's right. So a quick summary, first of all, to start off. We have two battery metal projects now in Quebec. We have the original Midram and LaForce, which we've consolidated into what we call the Bellataire-Anglaire project. That's a project we've doubled in size back in May of last year by acquiring the adjoining claims. So we have 4 claims packages forming that project. And then in late December, we acquired the Horden Lake deposit. Horden Lake deposit is a copper-nickel PGM deposit. It's got a resource defined around it. It's got some very attractive attributes to it, which I'll come on to. Therefore, we believe we've created a very exciting portfolio in Quebec in a very short space of time. The jurisdiction for us is a top jurisdiction. It's, clearly Canada is a great mining jurisdiction as a whole, and Quebec within that is very positive, particularly with some of the incentives they have there, like the flow-through share scheme where they have the highest uplift of any of the provinces. We have also, from an environmental perspective, Horden Lake. We'll come on to ESG a little bit, but Horden Lake for us is also very exciting because it's adjacent to hydroelectric power lines, giving us the opportunity to build a carbon neutral development there. We have some great news flow over the next 12 months, which we think will generate significant value for shareholders. And one of the reasons we're here today is because we are a new player in Quebec with a new portfolio. Really, there's not many people that know much about us, and we feel that as a result of that, we haven't got full value attributed yet to that portfolio, and I'll come on to a little bit about that towards the end of this presentation. A quick look at Pivotal Metals. We are listed on the ASX. We do have 2 sets of assets, one in Spain, tin and tungsten, and one in and a set of assets obviously in Quebec. We've got a reasonable cash balance, and as typical for all ASX juniors, we have an awful lot of shares out there for those of you in Canada who aren't used to seeing that, but that's fairly normal for an ASX listed company. Right, and on the ESG side, to operate in Europe at all, you have to be extremely cognizant of stakeholders, local communities, very different from Canada or Australia. Everywhere you go, there's a town or a village nearby. If you don't apply the strictest environmental and social governance type policies, you'll never move forward. We've taken that focus and we'll be driving it in Canada as well. And as I mentioned, Horden Lake in particular offers an opportunity to develop a carbon neutral style development. Also, we are, as a junior, one of the few out there that's actually released a baseline environmental social governance report, and that's on our website. So that's not something we need to do, but we believe in the transparency in the reporting. So Horden Lake, that's let me just go straight on to the portfolio. That's in the north west of Quebec. It was discovered in the 1960s by Inco. It was quite remote at the time. They focused on copper nickel only, and it was never developed for that reason. Prices were fairly low, and it was only accessible by float and or helicopter. But since then, there's the James Bay Highway has been developed, which passes within 18 kilometers of the mine site or the property. And that gives us the opportunity to access hydroelectric power. It's got fiber optic cables and obviously opens up the whole area in terms of infrastructure and logistics. I'd like to make a comment at this point about the whole region, actually. We deliberately wanted to go into Quebec because we saw it as being a very interesting province and offering some tremendous opportunities. And what we've seen over the last 12 months or so is some significant movements in this area. There's been obviously the Wailu BHP fight for Noront, for the Eagle's Nest. They paid in the end $600 million for that, over $600 million. That's in northern Ontario. Just south of us is the Le Grasset mine, 5 million tons at 1.53% nickel equivalent. That was acquired by Arch Exploration only in July of last year for $54 million. So people are recognizing there's not many deposits around of battery metal deposits that are this advanced stage that you can get your hands on. And we're very fortunate that we've been able to get hold of one ourselves in the Horden Lake. The Horden Lake, the picture on the left there is the surface expression of the resource. It's 2.2 kilometers long. It's got a long strike. It's open along strike and at depth. We've got a few cross sections I'll come on to. 52,000 meters of drilling when we acquired it. We've got those drill logs. We've got the assays. We took those and we completed a JORC, a resource estimate, which came out with a pit-constrained resource of 28 million tons at 1.5% copper equivalent. There's significant upside in that, though, because the drill results from Inco, which are down in the southwest of the resource, only focused on nickel and copper. Only the latter drilling programs in 2008 and 2012 did they look at multi-element assays. And in those multi-element assays, we see significant amounts of gold, cobalt, palladium, and silver. So when we ran our resource estimate, we were not able to ascribe all those metals to the resource. So the 1.5% copper equivalent does not include any silver, does not include any cobalt, and only includes about 40% of the gold. This is what the resource looks like. You can see in the right-hand picture the density of the drilling where the latter drill program was, and how to the right-hand side of that resource, which is the southwest, there's only really nickel, copper in there. It's where Inco had a lot of their drilling, so there's a lot of upside just by going back into that resource and putting some additional holes down in the southwest of that resource. You can see that we're about, in this resource estimate, we're roughly nearly 1-for-1 copper nickel. All right, there's over 200,000 tons of contained copper, over 60,000 tons of contained nickel in this resource. But there's significant upside yet. As I say, no cobalt and no silver, and not all the gold's in there yet. In our drill campaign plan for 2023, we're also going to put down a few deeper holes targeting some high-grade zones that have been identified. Here's the pit-constrained resource. You can see a significant amount of it within the pit shell is already indicated. We'll put some holes down between the two lodes as well to see if they're connected. And we'll also benefit from an early-stage metallurgical test report that was done on the 2012 drilling, which gives us some good positive indication towards the metallurgical recovery of these different metals. This is an Inco cross-section just showing the resource dipping at about 55 degrees. It makes it quite amenable to open pit mining, but also it's open along strike and at depth. So there's quite a resource is quite easily visualized in terms of development potential. And this is a cross-section from 2012 drilling right at the edge, the northwest edge of the resource, which you can see the very high grades of copper, nickel, but also cobalt, 200 to 500 parts per million cobalt, 20 to 40 grams of silver. None of that's in our resource estimate at the moment, so some easy upside for us when we go back in. Then if I look at the other package, which is down to the southwest in Quebec, is the Bellatar-Anglaire Greenstone Belt. That is our original Midram and LaForce claims, and then in May of last year, we doubled the size of that to 157 square kilometers by acquiring the Alata and Lorraine claims. Now, again, this is a province that is significantly underexplored. Very, very high grade, massive sulfide expressions near surface in this Gabroic intrusive complex. There is tenors of over 5% copper and over 5% nickel but all shallow. No one's looked beyond deeper than 300 meters. When we originally acquired these claims, we took the sort of the holistic view or looked at the geological model and believed that these surface expressions are indicative of potentially a much larger, deeper feeder system. So we have VTEM results now over all the claims. We've done a revision of those anomalies. We already have 7 high priority anomalies shallow, but following the review, we've picked up another 20 high grade or high priority anomalies that we want to investigate below 300 meters in line with our geological model. Just to give an indication of the extent of the mineralization here, on the Lorraine claims, there was a mine there back in the 1960s, produced about 660,000 tons at 0.38 nickel and 0.9 copper. And within our claims, but not part of our claims, is the Lac Kelly deposit, which is about 1.4 million tons, 0.7% copper, 0.7% nickel. So very high grades in these areas, mainly shallow, but we believe there's potentially something much bigger and exciting below. So a lot of upside, we think, a lot of excitement going forward. Just in terms of Spain, quickly on that, we do have 2 development mines in the northwest of Spain, in the Autonomia of Galicia. This, they're both they were both producing back in the 80s. In fact, San Finks last operated in 2017. It was shut down. Key to reopening that was the award of a water permit, discharge permit that was awarded at the beginning of February. So these projects are, San Finks particularly is one that's on the path to recommissioning, and Santa Comba would likely be treated more as a satellite operation and look to process its ore at San Finks. That's certainly an option we've been looking at. But as a company, we believe that the future of the company and the best upside for shareholders is to focus on Canada. So as a result of that, we are going through a process right now of looking to divest Spain, whether that's simply by being diluted with third-party capital coming in or whether we exit entirely, that's to be determined. But we're in discussions now, and they're quite advanced discussions with several parties. So we have had some good successes in Spain. The main one in particular, besides the issue of various underground JORC resource estimates and drilling and studies completed, the big one recently was the San Finks water permit. All that's going to be factored into the discussions with those parties that we're in negotiations with. So going forward, we have a very exciting program. We've got around 8,000 meters of drilling at Horden Lake, targeting those areas that don't have the multi-element assays, some deeper high-grade extensions. So we should see both tons added, and we should see an increase in grade. We've got metallurgical test work to expand upon the initial study that was already done. So some extensive work there planned. We've got some baseline environmental study work, get that underway. With a PFS, we'd expect to be out in Q1 of 2024, following an updated JORC mineral resource estimate. Most likely, we'd also look to issue at the same time a 43-101 in parallel to set us up should we look to pursue a TSX listing. So naturally, as we have pivoted across to focus on Canada and the battery metals market, then it makes sense ultimately to have a TSX listing, getting access to the capital and more flow through shares. So a lot of activity there. On the Bellatar and Glare, we're going to be looking at doing some MT surveys to get a better image of those deeper anomalies before we start some drilling on those properties. So that's really a summary of Pivotal Metals. And I just want to draw your attention to this last week. We released a paid equity research report produced by a company called Oriar Capital. I've got copies of them. Interesting, they've done a very, very good review of our portfolio and done a peer review looking at similar companies with assets in Canada, Australia, and the USA. Battery metals project looking at Canada only. They've come up with a valuation around 21 cents a share. We're trading at about 4.2 at the moment. They suggest that once our story gets out there and better understood, there is the substantial uplift possible. But also, so that's just on a peer review, straight peer review, looking only at Horden Lake and only at the Bellatar and Glare assets. They see us trading at a 78% discount to the peers. And then on top of that, they have various upsides, like if you include the Spain assets, and if you look at our program going forward, targeting the exploration and the additional metals into the resource. So a very interesting reports on our website. I would strongly encourage anyone that wants to follow Pivotal Metals to have a look at that. So that is Pivotal Metals. Thank you very much.